I think you'll probably agree that one of the biggest challenges that business owners, sales teams, corporations face is the expansive world of sales, and it's really interesting. One of the things that I've seen and experienced over the decade that I've been coaching businesses, and certainly over the last couple of years, and since COVID, is the shift in the I guess the sales process and the actual the way in which people like to buy. There is no doubt that people like to buy. Even where there is the economic challenges that we face at the moment. Actually, when you start to look at it, although everyone talks about the risk and potential of a recession, there is still no firm evidence of that, and people are still out there making purchases. But the interesting point and the challenge for business owners, and the bit that I want to address in this first part of two videos I'm going to share, is we don't like to be sold to anymore. We love to buy, but we don't like to be sold to. So how can we create a sales machine? And let's be under no illusion, in business you sell. That's what you do. And if you didn't sell in business, then you wouldn't have a business. And I think that's probably fairly straightforward and easy to understand. So what can we do? How do we start to create a business model where we can sell effectively, but in a way that is engaging with our client base, with our prospects, with our marketplace? So over this and the next video I'm going to just share a number of strategies. It's supported by a written blog, and you'll also see that there is going to be a playbook that is available for you to dive into should you so desire. So 5 strategies today. The first one, retention, repeat business. I think you'll all agree that one of the hardest things to do in business is to actually get new customers. And yet sometimes there's so much focus on getting the new customers, we forget that once we've got a customer, how do we retain that customer? How do we retain them and focus on the lifelong plan? Their lifelong value for that particular client. Now, the interesting point here is what we fail to understand from this is the acquisition cost. How much does it actually cost us to buy a customer in the first instance versus how long and what is the life value of that customer over the lifespan of them doing business with us. Now, an interesting example of this one, and one that you'll probably find quite amusing, is, although it's not meant to be amusing, is the funeral company. You'd kind of think that you only do business once. But the bit that I can say, that the funeral company that has worked with our family has dealt with all of our funerals and is likely to deal with all of our future funerals, probably for generations to come. So you imagine that very first time that we chose them as a family, and that wasn't me, but it was my grandparents, and they chose that the company that they wanted to look after our deceased. And then we've used them ever since. That really gives a good and stark example of lifetime value. What does that look like for your business? It could be daily sales, it could be weekly, monthly, it could be annual. But take a real focus and look at what are the repeat opportunities. What is the life value of the client, of the customer that I'm working really hard to get? So retention is really, really good. The other point on retention is how do you make them feel? Do you create the wow impact in terms of delivery of your service? And there'll be more on that in other vlogs later on. Data. One of the challenges that we often find that you can hear about is, data is not something that I can do in my business. I'm only a tiny business. And then there's this phrase about big data, about companies like the big supermarkets that are able to accumulate all of this mass and wealth of data. Well, actually, in any business, you can start to create a level of data. You can collect data. You can make sure that you're monitoring the habits of your clients. You understand what drives your clients. You understand the demographic of your clients. You can see, actually, even on the prospect side of life, now there is, technology that will allow you to see who goes onto a website, who's looking at your social media. And it's don't underestimate the value of that data. Looking into that data to analyze and get some analysis of buying behaviors, of why people buy from you, how and what it is that they're looking for, so that you can be flexible and agile in your approach to making sales. So that second strategy is start to look at, and if you're not looking at it or not capturing it, then take some steps towards looking at your data. And I think Google have just launched their very latest analytical platform. So go have a look at that. Make sure that your website is linked into that, your social media is tied into it, your SEO is tied into it, and see what the data can tell you about what it is that your prospects and your customers are looking for from you, and actually what you can do to supply for them. Leading on from data, it's actually quite an interesting segue to this, the third strategy. And the third strategy is all about technology. And in the very simplest terms, do you have a customer relations management system? And it still surprises me to this day that so many businesses that I talk to don't. They don't have any system that manages, that interaction when somebody first takes an interest in your service, whether that's the first time they buy from you at the cashier and the cash point, or the very first time they look at you on social media, on your website, or when they send a request in, or if they book time into your diary. You can automate so much of this to help streamline and not miss opportunities. And a customer relationship management system is a first step. You can move on from that one to actually looking at how you can develop a business management system, which is pretty much an end-to-end. And there's lots of off-the-shelf, systems and technology out there for your business. So go take a look at what it is you do in business and think, well, okay, how can I systemize this? What technology can I bring into my business to help create a smoother transition and a simpler buying process? And actually, the interesting point with that as well is when we look at that repeat business and that retention, that life value, you'll actually see what the patterns are and what it is people are actively looking for in terms of that value from you. The last one for today really is about your sales team, and it's about creating a thriving culture in your sales team. One thing that often doesn't exist is we have people that are just like morphed into a sales position, or they've got multiple roles and one of them just happens to be sales. Give sales the attention it deserves, and gives your salespeople the attention they deserve. Create an empowering culture. Create excitement around the sales process. Create excitement around actually reaching out to the marketplace and having those conversations. Have a very clear vision and mission for the sales team that you can effectively communicate, that empowers everybody to really get focused on that. Create a unified approach in terms of actually helping to develop your business's sales system that you can then train your sales team on. And encourage open and honest communication. Interesting point here when we start looking at sales teams, and one of the things that I often see in businesses is where you have a sales team, there's almost certainly a marketing team or person, and the two don't talk to each other. So create a really strong culture within your business on your sales team. Well, look, that's enough for today. If there's anything else that you feel that is triggered from today, then share it in the comments. Jump on board, give us a call. Book a complimentary sales coaching session with me to unlock the potential in your business. But stay tuned, more to come.